Come join Melissa and her guests on the Chats from the Blog Cabin podcast. From North Carolina, this podcast will have you feeling like you've known these folks for years. Listen in as they chat about life, culture, current events, and more, all with a special Southern flair. Curl up with your favorite beverage and get ready to be entertained. Tune in now for a unique experience that's fun and insightful.
Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Chats from the Blog Cabin. You know, this show where I virtually invite people into the Blog Cabin to chat about life. And today we're chatting with Stephen Joseph. He is the children's book author, but he has got such a varied thing. I think you call yourself a book author, a crankiness expert, and a humorist. So, wow, that's a lot of different things all rolled into one. But Stephen, before we get into that, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so my day job, I'm actually a lawyer, and which I guess being a lawyer makes you kind of cranky. Didn't expect to be writing books, but all of a sudden had like this thought. My first book was The Last Surviving Dinosaur, the Tyrannosaurus. Saurus being the Yiddish word for problems, and it's a story about the smallest dinosaur on the planet that kept being very cranky dinosaur, and how all humans evolved from that cranky dinosaur. And that's why when babies are born, they're always crying, or we come out cranky. So then I started writing a blog on crankiness, which became a book, and then this book, A Grown-Up Guide to Effective Crankiness, and then kept writing, and then more kid stories came up. So I have my Snoodles books, which I have a lot of fun with, and it's just the most fun is collaborating with an illustrator. So yeah, so I have my law work during the day, and then when I'm not doing that, I have all these things pop in my head, and they end up on paper.
So writing the books, is that kind of a release of your day-to-day, like your stress release for your day-to-day of being a lawyer?
Yeah, actually a lot of the law stuff kind of inspires my other stuff. And I also happen to be a runner. So I literally run 2 hours every morning. And when I go out running, the ideas come in my head, and sometimes they start writing themselves, while I'm running, and then I just go home and I copy everything down that was already written in my head. And it's great. The best is when I have characters talking to me when I'm running. I just watch them, just have a conversation, and that becomes part of a story.
So take us through, like when you're running, is it something that you see, or is it something that you're like, oh, like just a thought runs into your head? Or like I recently attended a talk given by James Patterson, where he was talking about, he saw somebody on a bicycle and he just sat down and started writing his next novel, seeing a man riding a bicycle. Is that something that you see, or is it just a thought that comes into your head?
It could be like a thought coming into my head, or actually an experience. So give you a couple examples. As an attorney, I do a lot of mediations, and where we're negotiating, and I'm usually on one side negotiating, and there's a mediator. This was in my first book, where the mediator comes in and comes in with some message. We're all yelling and screaming at the mediator because he doesn't get it. So he goes, "Well, don't shoot me. I'm just a messenger." And then I have Shoot the Messenger, Crankiness as a chapter in that book, because I was thinking, hey, I used to be a messenger when I was a kid. I made minimum wage. This guy's getting $500 an hour, and it's a good job to be just a messenger. So actually want more than the messenger. And then another example, again, from a mediation, this mediator says, you could argue till the cows come home. So I had this cows come home thought in my head, and that became a number of stories. That's part of a chapter in my new book. And then also I like looking at old stories. So I redo Cinderella, and and I have like different characters in that, and I redo the Wizard of Oz, where the lion gets to eat the wizard, which is so much fun.
Oh, that sounds like fun.
Yes, yes. So, and again, it's to have a lesson in it. So there's, I want it to be as hysterical, really funny, even crazy, but there is a seriousness to it that this I call it a help yourself, not a self-help book. I don't like the word self-help. It's like self-serve ice cream. Well, you didn't serve your machine came up with the ice cream, or you didn't make the ice cream. So this is about like looking at my most recent book, Cranky Superpowers. It's discovering your own superpowers.
Yeah, I love that. Now, normally cranky and humor doesn't normally go together. How do you make that work?
Oh God, it's so easy. It's so, there's so much opportunity. I mean, even if you look at like sitcoms, like the old like Love Lucy show, it's they're in kind of, they're always in some sort of pickle, like that they have to get out of. And of course, when you're in a pickle, you're kind of cranky. You can't be like, oh, you don't watch these sitcoms and everything is going wonderful. Something goes wrong, and that becomes what I would call like a crankosaurus. Like a thing that, oh, what are we going to do? And you solve the problem, and there could be some sort of personal growth, or something out of that. So there's so much opportunities.
So, what made you decide to sit down and say, "Okay, I'm going to write"? First of all, you started writing your blog, your cranky blog, your Crankosaurus blog. You started writing that, and what at that point did you decide to start writing books? Let's first start talking about why you decided to write the blog.
Well, I started writing the blog because in my first book, The Last Surviving Dinosaur, there's like different reviews, and one reviewer wrote, well, he didn't talk enough about overcoming your crankiness. And my whole point is embracing the crankiness, and I call it the common crankosaurus, where it's like, you say the common cold, you have one or two in the entire year. A common crankosaurus, you can have 2 or 3 in the morning alone. So since it becomes like it's normal, and it's like, it's not something that you have to get rid of. It's something we all have. It got me to write more about how to embrace our crankiness, have fun with it, and not beat ourselves up because we're cranky. And also just one thing is just like my first book is more on effective crankiness. So and I talk about how, you go in to see, you go visit your grandmother, and she says, oh, Melissa, take off your shoes. I just bought this new rug. It's $25. I don't want to get the rug dirty. And you take off your shoes, but we kind of we put the dirt on each other with what we say. So understanding that, how do we deal with that effect? Again, it's not to get rid of it, it's to recognize it, but how to be more effective with it, that we're not hurting each other, or even we recognize it, and it's an opportunity for self-discovery. And that's the cranky superpower piece.
I love that, because a lot of people think that, especially when you get older, you're just a cranky old man or a cranky old woman. It's almost like it's placed on it that once you get older, the crankier you get. But the more you embrace it, you realize that that's who you are, regardless. That's always inside you.
Well, that's. I have a chapter, "Old Dog, New Tricks, Crankosaurus." Yeah, so in this new book, but yes, it's part of all of us. It's not just like old or young. Like you have a cranky little baby, you have a cranky old person. Yeah, everybody's cranky. And there's a lot of different things that make us cranky, and that discovering that piece, what we could do about it. It's really it's actually a learning experience for me. So a lot of the chapters, it's like, oh wow, like that could help me out. So like, just for example, I thought the thing that affected me, that really hits me, I have this chapter, Drive Me Crazy, Crankosaurus, where, and it happens to I think everybody, where it like the first sentence is, it drives me crazy when, and then you fill in the blank when something happens. And then after that, there's the next sentence, which really makes you crazy. I cannot understand how. So like how you, like, let's say it's my daughter, I'm having like, how I can't understand how, and then I have the story about like all these different interactions that everybody's having that same thing coming from different perspectives. And so have one, like there's people in a restaurant where the customers aren't getting served, and drives me crazy when the waiter who's getting directed by the owner goes in the same thing. It drives me crazy when the owner who gets the complaints, it drives me crazy when. So everybody, because of the exact same thing, they're all having the same reaction, but for different reasons. And then when you see that, this is so common, this happened. And then I could just, hey, maybe I don't have to get crazy. Maybe I could just say, yes, I don't understand it. I could take a deep breath. I could laugh about it. And have fun with it. So it's kind of a release that, like, it's my own personal discovery. And that was a chapter, like, for me, is my favorite.
Yeah, for sure. Because I think a lot of people, they get cranky, they don't have fun with it though, and they take it out on other people, and that's when the world becomes such a miserable place. And I think you're hitting on something right there.
Yes. So, and that actually just in my new book, one of my favorite little bits in my new book, I have a chapter, Crankosaurus Menopause. And the reason I wrote that chapter, somebody wrote a review on my first book, said, I wish he was a woman, because then he could talk about menopause. So I said, well, I'm not a woman, but I'll talk about menopause anyway. And I talk about, my parents were married 60 years. They never really fought, but there was a lot of crazy. So in my relationship with my wife, we have this rule that you're allowed to be 5% insane, 20% crazy, but you have to be 75% normal. And then you might think, like, hey, that's crazy. I'm doing the math. 365 days a year, that's 73 days of crazy. I don't even think I could take that. But it's counterintuitive, because if I told you, Melissa, you're not allowed to be crazy, 0% for you. So when you become crazy, you can't say you're crazy, which we all become crazy at some point. You have to say, I'm not crazy. You are the one who's crazy. And me, I wasn't crazy, but being called crazy by a crazy person makes me crazy. And then I'm starting to think that you're insane. And then we go back and forth in this insane argument. And then you have this big fight. So the thing is, by giving you permission to be crazy, do you feel like, oh, wow, isn't that great? I feel like I just let it go and not worry, just, and the thing that happens is, instead, by giving you 20%, you end up using maybe 1% crazy.
I love that. And
and it all works out.
That's so awesome. We need to take a brief commercial break, but we'll be right back.
People welcomed me, and they knew the pain of the journey that we'd been on, because they'd been there too.
Other Parents Like Me is an online community, peer-led, for parents with kids struggling with mental health and or substances.
It's a space that's safe. Feels like I can actually share what's going on.
We offer 15 daily support groups per week and live speaker talks on Thursdays, as well as a monthly expert panel.
We also have a resource hub that has a toolkit. This includes over 1,000 articles, podcasts. There's a glossary with the most recent and relevant terms. And we have a directory that's been vetted.
The overwhelming feeling when we're sitting in a meeting and I'm telling my story and I see others shaking their head, tears falling, they understand this roller coaster and they're along for the ride.
And we are back chatting with Stephen about crankiness. Now, I noticed several times you mentioned you read your reviews and you get ideas from the reviews. And a lot of people, they kind of like, well, you know what? I'll read the reviews, but I don't take much stock in it. But I love the fact that you get some ideas for what you write from your reviews. Let's talk more about that.
Well, the reviews, well, I mean, obviously there's some reviews that, excuse me, some reviews that like, my eyes roll, and so I'm not going to give anything to it. Like in my first book, there's actually two reviews saying he talks too much about Turkish culture. And there was nothing in the book about Turkish culture. It didn't mention Turkey or anything. And then in my grown-up guide to effective crankiness, there was one review that said, well, it really liked the book, but he says, well, once in a while he pushes funny. And thing was about that, I go, definitely. That's one thing I know when I push, sometimes it's like when you push it too hard, you want people to laugh, it's too much in your face. And I made a conscious effort in my next book that I didn't push funny, it just happens to be funny. Mm-hmm. It just happens to be, it's the clever, a lot of the stuff that's like, it's even like, how did I write that? It's just like, I wasn't on drugs then, but the thing about that is just funny. You just read it, it does. It's so like off the wall and unexpected and just like makes a point at the same time. So yes, I took that from the reviews. I do take a lot from work, and just there, even what people say, where like I manage lawyers, and the thing about listening to attorneys speak, they always say, I hope for this, I hope the judge does this, I hope that this, I hope, a lot of hope. So, and then there's a phrase like, I hope for the best, prepare for the worst. And so I redo the story of, I happen to be Jewish, so I redo the story of the Jewish people leaving Egypt to go to the land of Israel. And there was this brochure that said, please be forewarned, while we hope for the best, we've only prepared for the worst. So, of course, every part of the way they get to the Red Sea, where's the cruise ship? I expect a big cruise ship over here. I heard your great uncle Noah not only have a cruise ship, he had a zoo on the cruise ship. Can you believe that? I didn't go for and no cruise. Well, we hope for the best. We only prepared for the worst. And then, where's the map? Do you have? Sure, you have to have no map. Well, we hope for the best. We only prepared for the worst.
I love that.
But the good thing that happened, one of the only foods they had was borscht, and they figured they were walking around in a circle in the desert for 40 years, but they realized if they dripped the borscht behind them, they would find out where they'd been, and they won't walk around in circles anymore. And that red line in the sand became known as the Borscht Belt. So if you know, the Borscht Belt's in the Catskills, so this is a joke.
No. Honestly, I love, have you ever thought about maybe making your own little podcast or something? Because some of the stories that you're telling right now, they're really funny. And the way you're getting into your characters as you're talking, it's really cool.
I haven't, the problem that I constantly have is my day job. As long as I have my day job, and then I'm still writing. I have a third Snoodles book coming out, which I'm really excited about. So that's keeping me busy. I actually have a novel idea in my head. So and now I'm going to have a podcast too. I have thought about stand-up comedy. So
yeah,
I was given this gig to talk in Times Square, on Broadway, on Earth Day, go up on stage and do some routine. So I just took material from my Cranky Superpowers book, and I did like 5 minutes of that. And they're like, oh, wow, that was fun. So yeah, I was thinking of like, let me go do stand-up comedy. But again, it's a lot of work you have to keep going to the clubs and if I was a young person, yeah, maybe it would have time, but having everything else going on, it's kind of hard. But who knows? You never know what happens.
Now let's talk about your children's books. Which one do you like better? Do you like writing the Crankiness books, or do you like writing the Zoodles books?
Well, I like. I mean, I would have to say, like, it goes with what the message is, what the message in the book is. And the one thing I have to say that I love about the children's book is the collaboration with the illustrator. I have this illustrator, Andy Case, who's in Nottingham, England. I actually flew out to Nottingham to meet him in person, to go hang out with him. And it was so much fun. It was just so, and the thing about you write a story and then you put into story blocks and then you describe what you want, and then he creates the world that's in your head, and then it's like it feels like a miracle, like that to me, like a miracle when you write the story, and it's like, wow, how did I come up with that's great too. That's like it's almost came from above into my head that somehow it got created. So that has a separate exciting piece. But I have to say, when you get a children's book and it's like and the illustrations are so great, and it creates this whole world of in this book there's like all the characters and the gizmos, sort of thing. If you could see it, like just characters, that's really, really special. The next book, why it's special for me, it's like when you just have an idea. So next book is Snoodles in Space, the Snoodle, the Zoodle, Cadoodles, and One Happy Schmoodle. My next book is Snoodles in Space, Episode 2, The Zoodles Strike Back. And the idea about why that book is so important to me, the idea came into my head that, if you know Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, that sort of thing. What's interesting about that, and I've seen Charlie and Chocolate Factory, both movies. I read the Roald Dahl book. And in that book, like Charlie is the hero. They have these misbehaving kids that it doesn't turn out too well for them. But I was thinking, particularly in the first movie, I always remember where all the town showed up, the media was there, and the little kids the bad kids probably were shamed. They were like probably in the newspapers and whatever. So it was so I wanted to write a book that made the bad kids the heroes in the book. So I have Frimpy Frumpy Fruitle and Wimpy Wumpy Woodle having a Fizzy Wizzy Papa-Doodle and a Swizzly Twizzly Slime-a-Doodle. So one blows up and pops, and the other one turns into a bucket of slime. And it's almost like a takeoff. So instead of Oompa Loompas, you have the Schloompa-Doodles, and they go to Charlie Chucky Chocadoodle's Chocolate Factory. So they undo the plot to make everybody willy-nillys and dilly-dallies. So they become the heroes, and they get the keys to the city, and all the students in the class are applauding them. So they become the heroes. But I can imagine, of course, in that book, there's newspaper headings about the kids that, and all the kids know that, like, oh wow, you really didn't do too well, did you? So that to me is a great story. And all my books, what I love about the kids' book is that I have a museum open up. The first book has an art museum. This book, the second book, had like a space exploration museum, and this book has a aquarium, because they use these vacuum-doodles to vacuum the gruel out of the oceans and clean all the oceans and the rivers, and they open up their own museum. So that's always exciting.
I love that. Were you a big going to museums when you were a kid? Did you love going to museums when you were a kid?
Yeah, yes. That was a big thing growing up as a kid. I grew up in New York City, grew up in the Bronx. So there's a lot of museums. And I remember, I remember going to Museum of Natural History. That was my favorite museum because then you go to the planetarium as well. So you go both at the same time. And it was like a voluntary contribution. So we go with like six of us and give like a nickel to cover all six because you could give whatever you want back. I'm sure now it might be a little bit higher, but for a nickel, we got six of us into the museum, and then we just spent the whole day at the museum. And that was pretty neat. That was a pretty neat experience. And of course, as a little kid, fond memories going to Washington D.C. and the Smithsonian museums, one museum after the other, and I would never get bored. Guys, just let's go to the next one. So that was always fun. And then when my daughter was little, taking her to Washington to do the museum thing. So I love museums.
What does your daughter think of your children's books?
Well, my daughter's 28, so she's kind of impressed, amazed, not expecting it. Didn't know where that came from, sort of thing. So that's fun.
I love that. The fact that she didn't know where it came from. I mean, I have a 28-year-old daughter, and I think if I wrote a children's book, she would wonder where it came from too, as well.
Yeah.
Now, I read in your bio that you're also a son of a Holocaust survivor.
Yes, my mother was in Bergen-Belsen. Both my parents, my father's from Romania. My mother was from Czechoslovakia, and my mother was in the concentration camp. So, that, being like a survivor, I think that kind of has an impact, growing up as a child, being a son of a Holocaust survivor. So I know, like even things that I had to deal with over, like bumps in the road of life that we all have. It's that kind of like survival mentality. I think I carry that with me. So so I think I mentioned that because I think that's an important piece of who I am.
Do you think that's why you embrace your crankiness? Or do you think that's why you think that's so important to embrace who you are, no matter your flaws and all? Because there's a lot of people that don't embrace who other people are.
No, I think that to me, embracing crankiness, it's a nice way to look at things in a funny way, but once you embrace it, then you could see all the opportunities. You get to laugh at yourself and laugh at situations, and then learn how to deal with it. So, and it's like so many different ways. It's like again, going to like a chapter. Like I use phrases sometimes that because it's funny when you think about it. I have a chapter, Axe to Grind, Crankosaurus, and people get angry. I have an axe to grind with this person, axe to grind, and the thing about it, and I created a story where this poor guy was given an axe grinder, and so he grounded up his axe till he had no axe left anymore, and he needed his axe to cut the wood to warm his house, and when he had no axe, he couldn't cut the wood, and the town people found him like shivering almost to death in the corner of his house. So, and then they all saved him, whatever. So it's just like taking things and having fun with it. So another one, First Rodeo, Crankosaurus, and that chapter, again, it's a funny saying, and this is saying, like, I hear lawyers say, like people, they want to show how tough they are. This ain't my first rodeo. And the funny thing about that is that these people say it, they've never been to a rodeo. They don't know nothing, not a single thing about a rodeo. They haven't been 1,000 miles to the closest rodeo. And yet they say, this ain't my first rodeo. And of course, the funny thing about that is we never say the same thing about this ain't my first circus. Oh, Steve, what are you doing this weekend? Taking the kids to the circus. Oh, you don't seem too excited. It ain't my first circus. Yeah, so having fun with that. And of course, again, I have a story about this guy going to the first rodeo. He keeps falling off the horse, keeps getting injured. He has 2 broken legs, 2 broken arms, concussion, teeth knocked out. Finally, they pick him up off his wheelchair, put him on the meanest bull for the 10th rodeo. And he was able to ride for like 5-6 minutes when the top bull rider couldn't last 2 seconds. And they asked him, hey, were you able to stay on this bull? He goes, it ain't my first rodeo. So again, like that probably comes from like the survival thing. And, you fall off the horse, you keep getting back on, just that sort of thing. And that's how you could approach life, and your cranky superpower sort of thing comes out.
So do you think you being a lawyer helped you write your books?
Yes, definitely. And I actually being a lawyer, a couple things. First of all, lawyer that I have to negotiate, and so there's different skills in negotiating, giving people the opportunity to be heard. I have to convince other people that they're getting their best deal, even though like that. I always find it funny where like if someone say, "Oh, I'm going to win," it's like, well, the other side's going to like brace. Well, no, you're not. And like I have to convince the other side they're going to get what they want when actually I'm getting what I want. It's how we negotiate. I was married to a therapist for 20 years, and then after that, I have my new wife, we've been together for 12 years. She's also a therapist. So being with therapists for over 30 years kind of rubs off on me as well. So that kind of combination, psychology used in negotiation, that's all about psychology.
Well, I definitely could tell that.
It all gets put together.
I definitely could tell that you use negotiation and the Snoodles in Space book, because I read that one. That you had that negotiation between you, like you had 2 what was it, brothers that don't get along because they were like fighting with each other, and then how you had used the kids to negotiate for, like they were the mediators in between, and I love that.
Yeah, that's right. Yes, they were the mediators. Yeah, to save the planet. Yeah, so, very important. Yes.
So what do you think when the kids pick up the book, besides them having fun and getting them to read, what do you want kids to get out of your books?
I want kids to get the big thing is like think of possibilities and like a world that's a better place, leaving this world a better place than the world that you were given, and in thinking of the possibilities. Actually, that book was that's whole story. In that story, there's 2 parents saying, "Oh, they scold their kids. It's not brain surgery. It's not rocket science." And it started out as a blog, Rocket Science Crankiness, and the point of the blog is that people always scold their kids or tell some young, usually it's a young person, it's not rocket science or brain surgery, when it was the most simplest task. And I said, the person hearing that, oh, I failed in the most simplest task around, so why should I try to do anything difficult? So it was important to take that and make it a story where what happened on the planet, Zoodle, all the actually it came from the rocket scientists and the brain surgeons would poo-poo everybody. Oh, you are only a blogger, podcaster. It's not rocket science and then everybody became so intimidated to become rocket scientists or brain surgeons. There was none left on the entire planet. And that also came. I'm listening to the radio say we were producing less scientists, less this, less that, and I like you always hear things. Oh, we have global warming, this problem, this thing, that thing, and then you watch on TV every another zombie movie sort of thing. And I wanted to write something about no, we can make this place a better place. Mm. And that's where, with the creativity, with the museums, the curiosity, and that is so important. And even like these kids who made a mistake in the next book, they become the heroes, and they build their own museum as well. So again, like making everything better. The rivers and oceans are now clean because of these kids, and it's by taking chances, by being creative, by challenging themselves and making the right decision. So that's why I want kids to get out of it and have a lot of fun with it too. So I think even in both my books, whether it's for adults or for kids, that they need to have a lot of fun with this. But there is a serious message in there as well. It's just that I want people to take out of it and filled with hope and filled with, I could do it. And that's why I call these like a help yourself book, that you want to help yourself. You don't want anybody to have a book to help like self-serve ice cream. You want to go out there and do something.
And I have never thought about the self-serve ice cream, because you're right. You don't actually make the ice cream. The machine makes it. You just have to go. You have to push down the lever to get it for yourself.
Yeah, right. That's it.
I never thought about it that way. So you've given me a new outlook on that. So our time is almost up. I always ask my people I'm interviewing if they have one last little nugget that they would like to share. Something that if they don't get anything else out of the interview, that one little last thing impression that you want to leave on it, what would it be?
Well, I think the point I write in this epilogue, I think it's important. I write not in epilogue, in the beginning of the book, prologue. I wrote this a lot. My first wife, she had ALS and she passed away last year, and I wrote something about, and she passed away during Passover. And again, I bring Passover into this, about how she was, because Passover is like freedom from slavery, and a lot of people just think when they think of freedom, they think freedom from. But when you think of you're freed from slavery and you're in the desert for 40 years, it's not the freedom from, it's the freedom to, and that's what I want people to focus on. What is going to be your freedom to, and not necessarily the freedom from. And I think that this book, Superpowers, that's what you get. The other thing I do not like when people talk about good, like you read a lot of these books, good habits, bad habits. Habits, I think of like parking, alternate side parking. You have a good parking spot, but eventually you end up moving the car. Normals, or you embrace your normals. You find normals that you have. That's more permanent. You're building a house. And I want people to find their normals, and that's going to be their superpowers.
I love that. Embracing your normals. Well, I'm going to already tell you, you already gave me my title for this particular episode, and you talked about at the very beginning, embracing your crankiness. And that's what I'm going to entitle this episode, because
that's what it is.
I think that's exactly what it is that we need to embrace the good, the bad, and the ugly of ourselves and not be so down on ourselves. Because I think in this day and age, everybody get so down about things that aren't right in this world instead of things that are, you know what, maybe it's not right, but we need to laugh about what's not right. You know?
And then make it right.
Right.
And making it right. Yeah.
So what's coming up next for you?
Well, coming up next, this just came out a couple weeks ago. So, and my illustrator is working on my next Snoodles book, Snoodles in Space, Episode 2, The Zoodles Strike Back, which I'm really excited about because, like, I've seen the illustrations and they're like amazing as always. That's all you could do. So that's going to be out next year. And I'm thinking about writing a novel.
And what's the basis of the novel?
It's very complicated. You know, it's just it's just a trial consultant who's pulled into this murder trial in Paris after she learns her grandmother in Paris. Her grandmother lives in Paris. She's a New Yorker, but her grandmother gets murdered. And her father had been a pharmaceutical industry person. The person accused of murder was a good friend of her father. And so she's pulled into the culture of France and the legal system of France and dealing with her grandmother and this friend. And it's kind of like I have the movie in my head, actually, because there's a lot of different scenes as opposed to the story. Is because and I could go into another half hour just talking about the little things because it really pulls out real life events that it's like your mouth is agape. Yeah. But that's what makes this story, like, I think, compelling, and I'm excited to write that.
And when do you think that will be done?
I don't know. There's research in that one, yes, and then I have to work. I have a friend who happens to be the trial consultant, and I have to get stuff out of her and see what I come up with, and again, that'll be a collaboration, which is always exciting.
Well, I will say when you do get it written, you're more than welcome to come back on and share about the book as well.
Well, thank you for having me.
So, guys, I will put in the show notes where you can find all of Stephen's work, as well as where you can find Stephen. And thank you so much, Stephen, for coming on and for sharing and for embracing our crankiness and for telling us to embrace our crankiness.
Yes.
I think that's very important.
Great. Thank you so much, Melissa.
You're welcome. And guys, be blessed. And remember, keep chatting and embrace your crankiness. Bye.